Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast. I'm Adrian Sanabria, host of the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast and the principal researcher at the Defenders Initiative. And welcome to this webcast sponsored by Fastly. I've got three guests with me today. Liam Mayron, staff product manager at Fastly. How you doing, Liam?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing pretty good. It's been a good day so far. Good weather here. Daniel Corbett, Principal Product Technology Manager on the Fastly Security Product Team. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, it's been a little while. You were on, I mentioned my podcast. You were on that podcast, I think we said a year ago or 2 years ago. I forget exactly when it was, but
yeah,
it's been a little bit.
That's right. You've had quite a few episodes since then, huh?
Yeah, weekly, we rack them up pretty quickly. Yeah. When we do it every week.
Great to be
back. And then
back.
finally,
Thanks.
finally, Simran Khalsa, staff security researcher at Fastly, is with us as well. How are you doing, Simran?
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast.
And Simran's under a little bit of pressure because we have challenged him to run a demo. So we'll see how that goes. We're going to kind of play it by ear. And if the demo works, great. If the demo doesn't work, then we'll still kind of verbally walk you through it. And we've got some images to show you there as well. So we'll still get you through that. And today we are talking about using WAF Simulator to transform DevSecOps workflows. If you have a question during this webcast, you can check out those blue buttons down below in your interface. At the bottom there, the first one is a chat. I'll be checking that periodically to see if there's any questions down there, to check out any conversation down there. You can chat with other attendees as well. And then right there in the center, there's a Q&A button. You can use that to submit questions as well. All right. With that, let's jump into it. So, Liam, I'm going to come to you first. Let's just talk about the state of security testing and tooling for DevOps folks. What are the kinds of challenges that we're seeing here, and kind of building this foundation of why build this tool, right? What are these kinds of problems that they're struggling with?
I think it's a great question. There's a number of challenges that DevOps teams face, especially when it comes to security testing. I think the big one is bottlenecks created by security testing, especially if it's bolted on, the requirements come late in the process. They can be really disruptive and potentially take away time from the core task developing the features and functionality that needs to get out. There's a few ways to address it, but really the most effective is to embed the testing throughout the development process, not have it as a distinct phase, but just work on it continuously all the way from the earliest point possible.
Right. Yeah. The less tabs you have to open, the more integrated into the workflow, right? The easier that's going to be.
Totally agree.
And also curious from your standpoint, I've seen teams where the DevOps folks themselves kind of take on security as a responsibility, and then situations where security is more put upon them, right? What are you kind of seeing there? Is this kind of is this something that's self-driven from the developers, or how often do you see that versus the security teams, kind of trying to wedge things into the already hectic workflow going on?
I mean, I've seen both models. Really depends on the enterprise, how it's organized, the enterprise's goals and objectives. So there's different ways to approach it. But what I think is really key, especially when you have distinct parts of the organization, the development team, and then the security organization, is to be on the same page and understand, for the security team to really understand the priorities of the development team and what they're trying to accomplish and their timeframes, and for the development team to have that dialogue with security to really be aware of where these requirements are coming from, why they are being requested or being mandated. Having that dialogue and the empathy between two teams when it's separate can help a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing worse than being forced to do extra security stuff is to find out that that security stuff isn't really doing any good, right? So I think that's one of the reasons we're talking about this today is how do you measure efficacy and effectiveness with security controls? In a lot of cases, we just see controls just kind of tossed out there, like we did some things, we deployed some stuff, you're welcome. But we got to go a little bit further, I think, Daniel, to ensure that all that stuff that we threw out there is actually doing something other than creating extra work for developers. So what was kind of the genesis for you building WAF Simulator or realizing that this was a thing that needed to be built that was kind of missing or a gap in this workflow for devs?
Yeah, first of all, we started, there was a combination of inputs that we received. We had our security research team, which Simran is on, saying this would be an amazing feature to help organizations get better control and insights into whether their WAF is working how they expect it to. And that's not only the base efficacy of the WAF and being able to block SQL injection attacks and things like that, but also ensuring that even the business logic based policies that you put into place are also functioning as expected. The other input we started to see was from various customers who they had written some rules that they thought were functioning in a particular way. And maybe they were, but along the way, they may have opened up some gaps in their security posture. One example I could share is we all know that many organizations go through various pen tests, sometimes on an annual or more frequent basis. And sometimes for those pen tests, they're going to allow unfettered access to the pen tester, either through the form of allowing particular IPs or using secret headers and things of that nature to allow access through. But that access is only supposed to be for the duration of the pen test itself. But in many cases, it just gets left untouched. It gets forgotten about. In our WAF, we do have the ability where you could set an expiration on the rule, but some folks don't always see that or implement that. But what we've seen is these various rules where you're allowing access for one thing or another may just leave wide open gaps, and without having a simulator in place where you're basically able to perform some kind of unit testing where you say, here's a sample request and here's what I expect to see out of it, you might lose track that you have these gaps open. And I think to go back to where you're talking about the relationship between the DevOps teams and the security teams, I think that's really helpful because the security teams could even construct these requests and give them to the DevOps teams and say, here's sample requests and here's what we're expecting those results to be. And they're able to tightly integrated them in the pipelines. But I just say that it was a combination of inputs from our security research team saying this would be something very important for customers to have, but also directly from our customers, where we were just seeing many instances where rules were just completely misconfigured. And one example I'll just share, the final example is even creating a basic rule, right? You can go to create this basic rule, and how do you know that it's going to work or it's not working? Sometimes you have to send on yourself. You have to publish the rule live and then send sample requests on the side. With the WAF simulator, you can just do it all in the interface very, very cleanly, and you don't have to become a curl expert or something like that.
Right. Yeah, and this is it's not just for testing security controls. Like some of these controls could potentially cause breakage as well, right? So some of this is just going to be basic functional testing as well, I imagine.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And that's what I refer to more of as the business logic rules. They may not necessarily be there for security purposes, but there's every organization has different business logic they want to implement at various levels. And a lot of times the WAF could be leveraged for those cases.
Yeah. Yeah, I remembered actually the website we used to publish all this stuff on, seworld.com. One day it just started showing up blank for me. And it was just ripping my hair out trying to figure out why. And it was a new Chrome extension I had installed that was a new password manager. It was a free password manager from an identity provider whose name I'm not going to mention. And yeah, I just had to go through there and systematically disable each of my Chrome extensions until the website started working again. But only website that gave me any trouble, and just because of that one Chrome extension, it was kind of bizarre. So yeah, crazy stuff can happen. Definitely unintended consequences when putting certain rules into place. You put
Absolutely.
an asterisk somewhere. Who knows what's going to happen? All right, coming to you, Simran. Yeah, so you were one of the folks requesting this, right? You know, like I imagine this helps a lot when you're, you know, maybe you provide some support as well to customers. You know, help us understand like what your role is, why you guys were pushing for something like this.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, as you mentioned earlier when you introduced me, I'm on the security research team at Fastly, and we focus on like threat research, vulnerability research, threat detection, product innovation, and really kind of more of a focus on like customer security. And I've been in this industry for just over 15 years, and definitely formerly more of a practitioner on the practitioner side. And these are some of the big things for me of like just from experience, especially like in general, like managing a WAF. It's like, if I set up these rules, how do I know that they're going to be working as expected? Kind of like what we've been alluding to and talking about, right? And so I was a huge proponent of just trying to get this into the hands of our customers. It wasn't an internal tool of ours available to us, but we really wanted to make it like available to our customers. And so that's when we worked with product and really push this out to get it to them. And that's kind of like, how it came to life. And yeah, and just in general, it's like, I talked to a few customers, and they really expressed, we before this, we had released our efficacy framework, which was just a framework to demonstrate for customers like how to measure the effectiveness of their WAF through attack simulation traffic. But then this kind of goes a step further in managing the WAF, right? Because it's like, okay, you can do a WAF bake-off. You can, decide like, who can detect what better. But in reality, everybody has a different environment. People are running PHP, people are running Java, people are running Python apps, all this mixed, this very various like hybrid infrastructure. And so when you want to get more specific on maybe like, okay, I know that there's this CVE that's applicable to my environment, like in my technology stack, and I want to write a custom rule. Like, so for example, like our WAF, like we detect a lot of these attacks by default, whether it's like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, traversal, et cetera. And so a lot of like some of these published CVEs that are out there, it's like, well, we detect that by default, right? But customers have the ability to create custom rules where they can get additional signal intelligence if they want, right? So I might just say, you know what, I know I detect this, but maybe when I detect cross-site scripting on this specific path and it matches this specific pattern, then in addition to that, create this tag called CVE 2025 12345 or whatever the CVE rule is, right? And then beyond that, it's like, okay, I need to document that somewhere in a standardized way in version control, where, if like, let's say I manage the WAF and one day I decide to leave the company, right? Like all that domain knowledge, it leaves with me, right? It needs to be somewhere. If somebody comes back into the configuration, into the management of the WAF, they understand exactly what's going on, right? They can go and they can look at all these tests that I've written against my WAF, these custom rules. They have a better understanding of that, and then they can test the efficacy, test the detections. Does it make sense to keep it? Maybe we no longer have that, like we've upgraded our software, so like maybe it's irrelevant, we don't need to, or maybe we switch the underlying technology stack and that is no longer applicable, right? So we can remove that. So things like that, those are things to consider. And that's what makes this very powerful. And I think just having the ability, right? It's as a researcher, right? Like, all of a sudden, CVE drops, it's a 0 day, or wait, well, it's not a, I wouldn't get a CVE number if it was 0 day, but like a 0 day drops or something. And like, how do we detect, like maybe there's a working proof of concept out there. And so I can just quickly go into the WAF simulator, right? And I can just drop, maybe there's like an example that was dropped online somewhere. Just throw that in. Does my WAF detect this? Like, it's just a quick sanity check. And if not, it's like, okay, let's escalate to Fastly's team, or let's reach out, whatever it is, or let's create a custom rule to like block this. So there's like, I think just from that perspective, it just really helps that proactive approach of just kind of staying on top of things. And then just the ability to have it like integrated, like our whole entire solution is API first approach, right? So that goes, and that's what makes this like you transform, that's what I call like transforming DevSecOps workflows, right? Because it's like everything is API based. You have like the option of using a Terraform provider for managing all your configuration and rule sets. And then in addition to that, we have those WAF simulator now. So now we have a supported Go client, which you can use, and you can hit this API endpoint and you can write CI/CD test configurations. And that was the demo that I was trying to prepare for you guys. And hopefully I was having some difficulty logging in, but I would love to share that because I had it working yesterday, and it really illustrates all of this, what I'm trying to kind of talk to you about and describe. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think our customers are really excited about it. And I really would like want to show the utility in like a practical sense. Because I think it's a very powerful tool. And honestly, there's a lot of the security tools out there that don't really have a good way to kind of like validate and test the rules that you write, right? So I mean, just having this integrated experience is it's very cool. Yeah. So
yeah. Yeah, and it's often it's the next time you have a pen test, like that's when you find out all the security controls you deployed, whether they work or not. Famously, I love the example of, and it's not a WAF example, but Equifax, the emerging threat team, produced a detection, a snort rule for the struts vulnerability. They were worried about getting hit with, and then they handed it off to the SecOps team, and they deployed it. But neither team tested it to see if it worked, and the snort rule did not work. In fact, so that they were not able to detect that attack with that snort rule. And it's kind of a mindset, right? It's like folks on the emerging threats team or the security ops team didn't really have like an engineering background, so the idea of QAing your stuff or testing your stuff, was not an obvious thing to them, whereas somebody with a developer or software engineering background, a little bit more obvious. The other example I can think of is, and I apologize for any trauma that I bring up here, but the Log4Shell, I think, was a fast and furious changing WAF rules every half hour as new evasions and stuff like that came out. So I don't know if that stood out to you guys as well, that event.
Oh, it certainly did. And to be honest, we had the simulator available to us too while we were actively writing detections and keeping our customers up to date on the latest patterns as that constantly evolves. So 100%, yeah, we encountered that. So
yeah, I think like as Simran mentioned early on, this simulator tool was something we actually had available internally for quite some time. And so it was just a matter of us exposing it to customers. But as we were iterating on Log4Shell, we were testing all the various variants that were coming through using the simulator and internally, and also helping it to improve our own detections of that.
Simran, if you're prepared, we can go ahead and jump to a demo if you want to share some stuff, or we can stall for you a little bit more if you need us to stall. How's it feeling?
You're
I think
muted,
you're muted.
Oh, am I muted?
You're good now.
No, not now. We can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So for whatever reason, my account is, I'm just having trouble logging into like the console, but I believe Corbett, I don't know if you maybe you could run a couple things for me and I can kind of switch back and forth. I don't know if you're prepared for that, but um let me just see something else really quick. So I can log out of this.
While Simran does that, and I could share my screen as well, but while he does that, I did want to say, he mentioned one example of someone who has the knowledge of the security tool or product leaving the organization and taking that knowledge with them and the impact that can have. But I think the opposite is also true, and we've seen this and also discussed it at length, where an organization can have 5 or to 10 members managing the security product or even more. And when a new employee joins the organization, that tool may be completely new to them. They may not have a good grasp on it, which means that mistakes can and will be made. We're all humans, right? And especially when we're working on new tooling, you're bound to make a mistake, no matter what. It's part of the learning process. And so the simulator also helps to identify when those mistakes are made, especially what Simran was saying about how you can leverage the API and hook it up into your CI/CD process. That means that if somebody does accidentally deploy a bad rule that either A, breaks the site, like we were discussing, or B, opens up the security policies too much, you'd be able to quickly detect and react to that through your CI/CD process, including initiating a rule rollback, right? Because you could use the simulator to detect that there's something wrong with your WAF policies. And then if it does detect it, you can then instantiate a Terraform apply if you're managing your configurations through Terraform and revert back to the last known good state.
Yeah, I would add there that the being able to simulate, being able to test means that you can deploy potential fixes more quickly. You have a structured way to roll them back. You can test more things, so it opens up more opportunities and potentially to get to a resolution more quickly than, say, just deploying right to production.
Yeah, and I think everything you're saying, Daniel, that it's just really, accentuated when you consider, okay, now I've got 1,000 sites that I'm managing, right? Once you hit scale, the idea of documenting all that, running all those tests, and potentially having to roll things back. The level of automation you have to have there to automate at that scale is really important to have. That's just not something you're going to be able to do by hand. And my favorite thing here is getting rid of the old rules too, right? Like as you maybe upgrade to new web frameworks and things like that, things might fundamentally change. Pages that a rule is pointing at don't exist anymore. Maybe login workflows that don't exist anymore change, and you want to be able to clean up that rule base as well, and not have to do like periodic rule reviews where everybody gets together on a Zoom for 3 hours and systematically goes through every single one of them. So I'm sure people would appreciate not having to do that anymore as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's 100% correct. And, it could be said with many things, but everything is easy until you scale it up a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I want to say there was another thing I was going to mention here, but how are we doing on the demo?
We are good. I think we identified what the issue is and just trying to uh, get that fixed. But
I could share my screen in the
um,
meantime, and we could walk through a little bit through there. That's fine.
okay,
Sure.
Let me just select the right tab.
if you can.
All right. I think you can see my screen.
Yep.
Great. Simran, I'm just going to, do you want me to talk through it? Do you
Could
want to
you
talk through it?
increase the text size a little bit? Could you
Yes.
control plus plus for us a little bit? Thank you.
How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
Nice. All right. So we're logged into the WAF product, and I've already navigated to the simulator page. And at the top, we have a text box to enter a sample request. All of this data is already pre-filled for you and has some sample data. And at the bottom is the response, because you might have rules that are based on the response that you want to look for particular attributes. If we just click simulate, below that, we'll see a few things. One, the response that came out of the WAF. In this case, it was HTTP 200, as well as the various signals that were attached by the WAF. The first one, the bot analysis signal, just means that it went through our bot detection capabilities. And then the other ones are what are called custom signals that customers can implement to get more insight and observability into rules that they've written. But let's go ahead and just do a real easy one here. We'll just add a quick traversal attack or LFI, and we'll go ahead and click simulate. And then down
Still
below,
works every now and then. You
Yeah,
still see that working every now.
It's funny. We support
Often in network equipment, like firewalls and routers and stuff like that.
Definitely. I think it's always going to be a thing. We support inspecting GraphQL, and when I'm talking to folks about that, I like to say that the new shiny toys come with new attack surfaces and also some of the old ones as well, because even new APIs like GraphQL are still subject to various OWASP injection attacks and things like that. So don't always go away. But when I ran the post with ..etc password, we could see below that we have some additional signals that were added. One, we have the traversal signal. It's telling us that it was found in the query string, and this is where it was found. We can also see that the request was going to be blocked by the WAF. It has that block signal. And also the status code that would be used to be blocked, because you could configure a WAF to use whatever status code you want to block the request. And then finally, we have this signal called site flagged IP. And essentially what this means is our WAF supports having different thresholds configured on it. And when a client exceeds those thresholds, in the case of my site, that threshold is 1. But when a client exceeds that threshold, they get flagged for being a malicious client for the next 24 hours. And you can write various rules against that. But again, this works both ways, right? Because right here, I just simulated how the WAF blocked this with a 406. But as we were mentioning, there may be cases where you don't want the WAF to block that particular path or that particular access. So you could test both methods, either blocking or allowing.
And I had to look it up, but 406 not acceptable is the text.
Not acceptable.
For HTTP 406.
That's right. That's right.
Daniel, I got a little bit of an ask for you. So this is kind of where I think when we create WAF rules and we want to ensure that they're still working as expected, right? So what I'd like to do is, can we quickly create a custom rule and just say when the path matches foobar and post key when the value essentially when we have a cross-site scripting signal and the post key value is present, then let's like add a CVE rule for that. And let's just say like we were, we detect this by default, but we know that we want the additional signal intelligence.
Yeah,
So
what do you want me to
like
put for the post parameter value?
Are
you able to see? Oh shoot! Hold on. Okay, I figured out.
I can no longer see what you're.
There we go. Sorry about that. The tabs don't. So I was like following along in the. All right, let's go ahead. Okay, foobar, and then you were saying the post parameter value,
or
you were saying. But sorry.
Yeah, so just the name equals post key 1, and then also where add a condition where the signal is cross-site scripting.
Okay, and then you said you wanted me to add a signal to that.
Yeah, just call it like CVE 2025 foobar, something like that. Okay. Cool. So this
the latest news sounds like it's going to be harder and harder to get these CVE numbers. I don't know.
Well, supposedly CVE is funded for another whole year, but who knows if we're going to go through the same drama again a year from now.
Yeah. All right, Simran, just so we're on the same page.
If attendees don't know, MITRE's funding to support CVE and NVD was in question yesterday, but at the 11th hour, apparently they got funding to continue having MITRE support building CVEs for NVD. So, sorry, continue.
Yeah. No worries. Thanks for that context. Simran, just to clarify with you, just to verify, path is foobar, name is post key 1. We're going to look for the signal XSS, then we're going to add
and then all those conditions have to be true. Do we have it all at the top?
That's right, we do.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Yeah.
All right. So we'll go ahead and create this. Navigate over to our rules menu, go to the simulator. Here we already have foobar. See, and then we do script alert. And click simulate. And then, there we have it. So we have cross-site scripting here, but this is the CVE signal that Simran had me add, CVE 2025 foobar. So we're able to validate that particular rule that we wrote is working as expected.
Okay, great. So now let's take this a step further and say, another person that manages the WAF was going through some of the alerts, and they saw that there were seemingly benign requests getting flagged as cross-site scripting, right? And this was they were coming on the post parameter post 2 value, right? So let's just say they didn't understand that there was a rule written to detect the CVE, and they said, you know what, I want to go ahead and just write an exclusion rule on this. I say, this endpoint, we shouldn't be detecting cross-site scripting. And guys, this happens a lot with people. It's just managing the WAF. It's very complex. Sometimes you don't really understand the logic, especially if you don't come in here every day. So somebody might just accidentally do this. And so this is why we want to have these like tests continuously run. But this is an example of what this might cause and inadvertently affecting other rules that are written. So.
All right. So do I have this right? So we're excluding cross-site scripting where the post parameter name is post 2. Or do you just want to do the path? How do you want to do that?
Just do the path.
All right, do the path. All right, so we're excluding cross-site scripting on the path foobar. And
you just say, yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yep, looks good. All right.
Navigate back to the simulator. Go ahead. We're on the same path. I'm going to go ahead and add that cross-site scripting attack back in. Go ahead and click simulate. There we have it. We've completely removed cross-site scripting because we were trying to add an exclusion on this particular path, but we indirectly also stopped detecting cross-site scripting and adding the CVE information that we were attempting to track.
What's known as a foot gun event.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, and to take it one step further, there's so in the demo that I had prepared for you guys, we have our NGWAF has a bunch of different site integrations, and one of those is a webhook, generic webhook integration, right? So what I ended up doing was anytime a rule, basically based on an event, so anytime a rule, a list, or a signal is either updated, created, modified within the console, anywhere, we get an event, and then that event is sent to a webhook, and then that event then triggers the GitHub workflow to then run my automated tests. So the test that I would have written to detect that CVE would now be failing in my unit tests. And then I also have just a GitHub action that also then says like on failure, then notify my my Slack channel. And then so basically, actually there's two separate channels. One is I have a channel for like WAF notifications, and this is just like, and this is built in too. There's a Slack integration built into the NG WAF, and you can send all these events to it. So that's also available. And then on the other side, I have WAF tests, which essentially just alert me on failure. So if I get a failure in there, I'm like okay, like my WAF, like my tests are failing, and then I can just quickly jump over to the WAF notification channel, and I can see, okay, like there was some recent activity, maybe this rule was created or something was modified, so I can quickly correlate between the two, like what just happened that caused my test to fail. So in an event like this, where someone just goes and writes an exclusion rule, I'm going to get instantly notified through my CI/CD testing on my Slack channel, and then I can just kind of go back in here, quickly figure it out, and get that working, and then reach out to whoever did this and just kind of educate them on maybe what we need to look for in the future. I'm managing this together, so yeah, that was kind of my demo. But Daniel, thank you for like driving this and helping out. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. One other point I just want to add here as well is like we showed a sample request and response, but I want to point out too that we're able to ingest the IP information as well from the X-forwarded 4 here, and which means that if you're trying to test IP-based rules, you'd also be able to do that as well, where you want to say like, well, these are a list of known good or known bad IPs, or my VPN IPs. I want to make sure these don't get blocked in particular circumstances. So it's very flexible, and the controls that you're given. And we didn't really focus on it too much, but you could totally tweak the response as well. And you could see when I add that HTTP 404 not found, you could see one of our HTTP 404 signals gets added. So we're able to analyze that response as well. And so there's a lot of flexibility in providing manipulations of both the request and the response.
There's a lot of what ifs you can play out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And when you tie it in with the API access, which I'm just going to pull up, let's do our best here. I'm going to zoom in to 1,000. Maybe that's a little too much. Okay. So we talked about the API a little bit, but let me just quickly see if I can show it here. Here we go. How do I get rid of the top bar?
You really narrowed down the view there.
Okay, maybe this is good, but we could see that the request is, like Summer mentioned, everything we make is built API first, and we could see that it's going to the API path here, and at the end we can see simulator, and then this just gets boiled down into a payload. Sorry,
I'm not sure we're seeing what you're seeing.
Oh, really?
Are we? I'm seeing content length through X-frame options.
Same.
I'm seeing those 5 lines.
Oh, well, that's awkward. Okay. So then I'll just stop doing what I was doing. I had Chrome DevTools open and I was showing the network request.
Yeah. You would have had to reshare that because that's a new window. Yeah.
No, it was okay. Yeah, it was like embedded in. I got what you're saying though, but yeah, it was embedded the same window. But
yeah, it's treated like a new window. Yeah.
Okay, it's okay either way. I was sharing the Chrome DevTools and just showing how. Let me see if I can do that.
So we also have. For the sake of this and automating the tests, I did actually open source a tool or a project called WAF Simulator Automation. It's on Fastly's GitHub organization, and you can pull that up. You can see how I've written some unit tests. I have a little test client there written that integrates with the API. And then I have just documentation on how to write the tests in like YAML format. And then it takes that YAML format and it does the assertions against what is expected and what you actually got. And so that's at high level. And then there's like GitHub action workflow as well that you can look through and see the steps that it takes to build and deploy and get those automations in place.
And if for folks listening and not monitoring the chat, I've dropped a bunch of blog posts in there, and as well as the link to the GitHub that Simran was just talking about. So you can find all those links in the chat. And reminder, if you have any questions on any of this stuff, feel free to drop that in the Q&A box or the chat box at any time. Another thing I wanted to point out, Daniel was just kind of casually like dropping like XSS attacks and stuff like that in there. So just a kind of a workflow observation here. I imagine the folks building the rules, and then the devs kind of building and automating these tests. Maybe there's some separation in roles there, and you do need some assistance from the security team to come up with the different attacks that you're going to use to test with WAF simulator. And you were showing it in a UI format, but I imagine when this thing is automated, it's all headless, and you just see the test results.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was trying to show too, was the API part, but I don't think I'm having luck. Yeah. Can you see the dev tools now?
No. No, we just see a thin bar that says simulation output.
All right. Yeah, I tried. It's not letting me, but yeah, through the API, basically, I'll just describe it. You have your basic API endpoint, and then you can send the sample request and response in JSON format, and then it responds as well with JSON, with all of the information that I was showing previously through the UI, how the WAF would respond, what signals were added, but everything's in JSON, which makes it super easy to just automate, interpret, pass around to other teams, and quickly extend it as well.
All right, excellent. Let's see if we've got any questions here yet. Nope. All right. Yeah, so the whole idea here being detection as code. I can't tell you how many security controls I've seen over the years that silently fail, sometimes for years. I've seen cases where we thought the MSSP was seeing our network traffic, but they plugged into the wrong span port 3 years ago. That is one of my favorite stories. That's a great reminder of testing and validating that what you think is happening is actually happening, and the controls you have in place are actually doing control things.
Yeah, definitely. There's one more thing I actually just thought of that I think it would be good to share is that I was talking about the IP and how you can block by IP or allow by IP. So I have a rule where I'm expecting the block when the IP is 4.4.4.4. I've popped that into the exported 4. And we could see down here that it has been blocked. But one of the things that the simulator really helps out with as well is sometimes in what could become a sea of WAF rules, identifying what actual rule is the detector here or causing the block. And we could see each of these hashes are the WAF rules that are responsible for each of these detectors. So if I was curious, oh, which WAF rule is adding this particular signal, I could take that. Or in this case, which WAF rule is blocking this request, I could take that and come back to my rules and just quickly pop that in. And we can see that, oh, here's the rule right here. IP address equals 4.4.4, block it.
Blocking DNS.
Yeah.
Isn't that, is that Cloudflare? I forget whose DNS that was. I know they've got 1.1.1.1. Stuff that has left my brain at this point. All right. Excellent.
It looks like it's associated with level 3.
Yeah.
Level 3 communications. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So I guess coming back to it finally, where I want to kind of wrap up is the workflow here between teams. And at the beginning, I asked you, Liam, about how this relationship goes. And I imagine it does differ from organization to organization. Maybe you have security leads within your DevOps team. Maybe you do need some assistance from the security team. But what does it look like in terms of who's actually building these rules? Like we saw you, Daniel, building, versus just kind of running those tests as part of the CI/CD. Like, where does that handoff occur? Or, where does security interact with DevOps, or do you typically see that security role within the DevOps team?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think like you kind of hinted at, it varies, right? Those rules and the tests can come from different parts in the organization. So the development team may have rules and things that they want to test. The security team could have other things that they want to test. Maybe some are more collaborative. So it really is a wide range of places where the test can come from, and the output could be consumed.
Yeah, I guess it depends on who owns the WAF, right? Like who owns responsibility for managing it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Sorry, Liam, go ahead.
No, that's good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna add, yeah, like back to this like shared responsibility model, and I think our product is pretty good for the shared responsibility model in the sense that you have like your corporation, or so your administrator, your WAF administrator might be able to enforce like corp policies, and then they might be able to push that down to the site levels. So that's whether it's like VPN IPs or like embargoed countries or something that you want to kind of prevent across all of your sites. And then you can grant access to, like, now that everything is more like microservice and distributed, you might have teams like managing specific aspects of the app. And so you can kind of empower them to like manage their own security for the applications that they build. And I mean, that's typically like what we're seeing. There's more of a modern trend to that, is like security becomes a part of your role as a developer. And so part of that might be managing the WAF also for the applications that you're building, because that application better than anybody else. And so that's kind of, then you can give them the ability to create those WAF rules, but then also have the visibility into understanding like what they're writing and ensuring that they're writing correct tests and be like approving the rules that are going into production and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I think it's like well set up to provide that. I mean, and the management, I mean, we can see there's customers that have a few sites, customers that have thousands of sites, right? And it just gets really complex quickly. So being able to have all this in like a version controlled way, to have the ability to go back and to check on like the logic behind certain rules and the way they were written is super important.
Yeah, to answer the question in the chat there, I believe as long as we go past 40 minutes, which we already have, you do get a CPE for this. I don't know how that process works, though. That's someone else's question. All right. Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap this up. I don't see any other questions. So, Liam, Daniel, Simran, thank you so much for joining me today, and thanks for a wonderful demo. I always loved get to see the products that we're talking about and how they work. It was great.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. And a big thanks to our sponsor, Fastly, for making today's webcast possible. Do check out all the links that I dropped in the chat. There's several blog posts, links to tools in there. So check all those out. And finally, a big thanks to the audience for joining us. We'll see you next time.